Welcome to the Condor DM show, out of order. Oh, it's so out of order, I start 5 minutes early. It's never on time, baby. Not when it's out of order. And why do I do this stream? Well, I use Saturday nights for other activities that I do in life. But when I'm not busy doing them, I have a few topics I keep aside for, well, that Saturday, then I'm free. I'll give you a stream. I'll throw it down. It's more random. You know, my Sunday show is consistent. It's every Sunday. You're guaranteed. But tonight is just, hey, I'm free. The activity I want to do, just not happening. And we're having that storm. Now, last week, I had a bit of a connection issue. And I'm worried. I'm worried with the cold storm coming through here that between that and Restream, we could have a few bumps tonight. I hope Restream is being as nice as possible, but I'm getting warnings from it, right? So let's see what we can do here. It's just that cold storm. It's hitting directly where I'm at, right? And it's like, whatever. I want to do the stream. Here I am. Let's see if it's going to work with me for most of the night. I hope it does. If we hit a bump in the road, I'm sorry, but be patient. Just give me a heads up if I get behind on something. Yeah, the 15 minutes, last year was a bit crazy. I fixed that, and I understood that. That was a bit too much, 15 minutes early. Man, I'd be so energetic to go. And to me, it was like I can bump an extra 15 minutes into the thing, or at least get it done in time when I'm running short, right? So I rushed it a few times. Better on time this time. But if it's out of order, between 10 to 9 is somewhere there. Second edition, I'm going to try to cover everything. And I mean everything. Cool Black Rose, I'm glad to hear that it seems stable right now. Just, again, warning, technical issues last week. I'm very sorry. I did a follow-up audio video on that just because I worked on that stream. It was really disappointing, the bumps when I was explaining stuff, because probably even getting them now. Like, it's probably even happening. I get warnings, so I don't know. But if it's still good, cool. Tonight, I'm going to go over every area of second edition. Now, not every detail, every rule, but explain things like psionics, but really top to bottom. For people that know second edition, I'll try to make this as interesting as I can, right? Okay. Let's... Cool, Zero. Glad to hear you still get a game stable. Wednesday nights, cool. The adjustment works for you. Right on. So tonight we're doing just second edition. We got to go with the basics, guys. Now you know the deal, right? So when it comes to second edition, the most basic thing any person coming in is going to hear about is THAC0. I said it in the video today. I've done it multiple times, but there's always someone new that's going to come up by the content and have to hear this stuff when you're explaining second edition. They'll be like, isn't that game with that stupid THAC0? Black Rose, slightly glitchy now, but no more than last time. I believe it's manageable. It's sad. It's sad that it's a bit glitchy. I hope it just holds up most of the night better. Just 2 weeks in a row I've had storms. The timing of the streams is storm hits as the stream comes on. So I'm... THAC0. Okay, the T and the H in THAC0 is 2-hit. AC is armor class. 0, not O at the end, is to represent the number you're, trying to hit against. Like that's the armor class, right? So 2-hit armor class 0. THAC0. So far we got that down. That's what that means, just to be clear. Now, in the game, everybody starts off with what we call a 20 THAC0. So initially, the idea is to hit an armor class 0 at the start of the game. You got to roll a 20 on a D20. That's just a natural roll. Basically, that number is the number you got to roll if there was a 0. Now, of course, the idea is the armor class in old school D&D starts at a 10 and lower, better, right? A lot of numbers are lower, better. Don't get yourself confused when it comes to THAC0. You might have a grievance with the math, but once you understand this, it works as well as D20 does in the WotC game, in the WotC editions of D&D. It's just different. Again, it's like, to me, it's like somebody getting mad at golf because when you're winning, it says minus whatever, right? It's like, well, doesn't that mean you're losing? No, don't get the complication too much. It's easy to understand once you get past these basics, right? So you start at 20, and as you improve in levels, there's a chart that will lower your THAC0 for you. So every so many levels, the THAC0 drops. Now, for some, it drops faster than others, like fighter compared to, say, the wizard. So the obvious stuff, like, it is the hit. It has to do with combat and attacking. So you would assume the fighter is going to have it's going to improve in that area faster than, say, a wizard. But either way, the THAC0 is going to improve as you go. Now, if you get, say, a weapon and you got a plus to attack with that, what does that mean? An improvement means to lower THAC0. And that's the hit. That's the attack. The THAC0 is accuracy attack. So when you have a +1 to attack, it would mean, say you had like a THAC0 17. You got a +1 sword. You're using that. Well, +1 would mean -1 from 17. Basically, you're working with a 16 THAC0 at that stage with the sword. Now, why is that important? Let's do some math here. Say you start the game with a fighter and you got a 20 THAC0, and the goblin has, say, leather armor, and they started with a 10 armor class, but the leather armor is going to improve their situation down, minus, lower better, to 7. So 7 off of the starting 20 is what? 7 out of 20 leaves 13. Roll 13 or more on a D20 if you're playing the fighter character to hit the goblin against that armor class. That's all it is. Basic math. The armor class number comes out of your THAC0 number, and whatever is left over, you got to roll that or above to hit. That's it. Pretty simple. If it's 0, it would just mean the adjustment to your THAC0 is nothing. So if your THAC0 is 16, you got to roll a 16 or more to hit that person with the 0 armor class, right? That's the idea. So far, we understand the basic of just swinging with the THAC0. THAC0 is whatever the base number is, armor class comes off of that. So again, 7 off of 20 leaves 13, 13 or more to hit. There you go. And you understand how the pluses are going to affect. Pluses to attack, again, are all about improving the THAC0. Improvement means lower. Now you'll run into a unique situation where you'll encounter what you call like an armor class that shows like a -2. You might see a dragon with a -2 armor class. What do you do if you see something like that? That's a sign that it's a little, remember, it's a little backwards. It's less, more type of thing. So when you see minus, what it really means to say -2 means you add that number to your THAC0. So if you were a high-level fighter with a 14 THAC0 fighting a dragon, he had a -2, you add it to your 14, you roll 16 or more on the D20 to hit the dragon. Pretty simple, straightforward. So if you do run into that unique complication in the armor class, that's how you deal with it. That's it. Explain pretty much how THAC0 functions in the game. How you get it, you get a chart at the start. Sorry if we're running into glitches again. Oh, I apologize because it keeps giving me warnings that we might be hitting them. So hopefully it doesn't get worse. You start off with a number. All improvements, lower that number. All improvements to the armor class in this game improve. Like it's basically every improvement to the armor class lowers it. It starts at 10. It's basically armor class minus from the THAC0. You roll that or above to hit. The only exception is when it says like a -2 in front of the dragon's armor class, like -2 armor class, you would add that number to your THAC0, and then you roll whatever that is on a D20 or above to hit the dragon. So that's really basic THAC0. Now, in AD&D 2nd edition, you'll hear about weapon proficiencies. So weapon proficiencies are just skills. Proficiencies in AD&D and 2nd edition are just skills. So it's like you could pick up any weapon, and there's some minus. Fighters are going to be a little bit better and have less minuses than, say, the wizard would have just picking up any weapon around them. But for the most part, you can pick up any weapon. The idea is, what are you good with, right? AD&D is second edition is sort of weird like this. You'll read the book and it says, okay, you can't do that. Well, always remind players, it's not that you can't do something. It's just that the game doesn't assist it with a certain set of rules. Sorry about that. That might kind of get with a certain set of rules. Like, say, I'll give you an example, like 2-weapon fighting. So if you're using 2 weapons, either outside of the ranger, outside of a certain unique gimmick with the ranger, you can use 2 weapons, but it says you're going to use them with minuses. So if you read it wrong, you might think you can't use 2 weapons. Well, you can, right? It's just that you're going to be swinging minuses. There's a lot of things you can just do in the game where the game, in a way, if you read it, it says no to you, but it's really not saying no. It just says there's no assistance, right? So it's like you're going to get minuses. You're going to have difficulties, but the game isn't saying a player can't do that with their character. Initially, you can still do it, and the more clever a player is, the way they can overcome things like minuses, get themselves high grounds, stuff like that. So it's saying to the player, you can do anything, and if you're a really clever player, maybe you can switch it around. You can give the minuses over to your enemy by putting them in a bad spot during combat, right? So it's all kinds of ways to confront that stuff. But weapon proficiencies are just weapon skills, and each character will be able to pick 2 or 3 of them. Fighters can do this thing called specialize, meaning they get an extra attack every couple rounds with their chosen weapon in most cases. And on top of that, they get bonuses to attack. And if it's the right weapon, bonuses to damage, right? Where they can put their strength behind the attack. So that's weapon proficiencies. We're going to go on to non-weapon proficiencies, which are skills. So this is skills in the AD&D second edition game. And the way they work is a bit different than in other games, at least the way I approach them and the way I've always seen them. I don't see skills in the old AD&D like a feat. Like, some skills have some direct things you can do with a dice roll. Yeah, there's some exceptions, but I mean, in the overall of it, the way I see it is, I treat it like it's game knowledge. It's like you can do some basic things like fire building is just fire building, but fire building can also be like, hey, how could I build it? How could I burn that tower down? Right? So it's like, to me, it's knowledge that you can start using to pitch and think up ideas. So if you're clever with your weapon proficiencies, I always say to players, because it's less direct on what you're doing other than some minor things, that with the knowledge, if you could take advantage by having it inspire you to think from that point of view, that your character knows that. And then just how can you extend the knowledge of that skill to do other things for you, right? Like fire building, most are going to think campfire stuff. And really, if you most players that have a skill like that, they go straight to the build the fire for the camp or something like that. Has been the same for years. But in reality, if you really think about it, if you use skills more like knowledge instead of like something like a feat in the game, and you're saying, here's knowledge, play with it. It's hey, how can I extend the fire building to take down the tower in one shot or quickly? How can I burn this thing down faster? How can I use this knowledge to advance these gimmicks? No worries, my friend. No worries. I'll put that up. Don't know if you've seen Stranger Things, but the door frame is actually a portal into the Shadowverse. Sorry, Steven. No worries. We're going to be talking about some portals and stuff like that. I got realms to talk about. Second edition is a big gimmick, a huge gimmick. We're going to cover some of the splat books and the whole 9 yards. But non-weapon proficiencies were, you had a choice in the game. You can use secondary skills, which were more like a straight up a sort of one framing skill overall that might say you were a carpenter in life or you were this in life. And it's pretty much going to say that's your focus. We're not going to give you 5 or 6 other of these skills, these random skills. We're going to say, here's more of a skill that does cover, you could sort of say, I might have done this, this, and this, and this when I was this kind of person. And yeah, it can cover a few areas. So the idea is it's like, that overall profession. So you have to have a number of skills to do those things. So you get those secondary skills. You can drop those and take non-weapon proficiencies. My preference was always to take the non-weapon proficiencies as a player. And I really pushed that as my gimmick as a game master. I never bothered with the secondary. I personally ignored them. I like the idea of them. I just ignored them. And I like this sort of take on using skills to inspire a player, because you get some players there that will get they just don't know what to think. They have a hard time just generalizing what to do sometimes. And something like having skill knowledge, and looking at skills that way can really say, well, hey, man, I got something to focus on. What can this do for me? And then take that and run with it, right? I hear you, Black Rose. It is funny. It is funny. So we talked about attacking with the two weapons too. That's an important part of AD&D, is this idea that you're going to hear a lot of things where the book doesn't seem to overall support it, but it might give you a minus to a play or something. Always remember that no isn't always no. It just, no might be there's not a feat to overcome the minus. Meaning, you can do the crazy thing, but there's way more risk in old school gaming. Now, old school gaming is like, imagine something less tempered. Like you'll see guys where, man, in nostalgia, when they're looking back at old D&D, a big explosion or a big shiny thing was important. Now, in new D&D, it's commonplace. There's a lot of power play, shiny things, explosions. It's a drawing back of that. It's a draw. With old school, it's just not to that level. It's going towards that, but the shining, the explosions, the overwhelming, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just more rare. It's all it means it's, and we know as old school, because it's more rare, it's a more special experience when you're blowing the thing up in the major way that you rarely ever do. Where in a WotC game, it might be commonplace that you blew up this, and this. But in the older games, it's a bit more down to earth, and it's a foot in deep into realism. See, in old school gaming, there's influence of simulation. And simulation means to try to simulate part of the real world. So because of this, it just does influence what we do. It puts the old school in a foot of reality. And in reality, you're not going to be running around like you're in Dragon Ball Z, right? Or that you're in Marvels either, really, like a Marvel superhero. More reality is, it's like a scientist, to be able to do that big spell, it takes a lot of work. We're going to get to magic in that, and you'll see what I mean by that. But it's more drawn back that way, where it can take you a long while to make the thing. So the idea is it's going to make everything around you that you're doing more valuable in certain ways. That potion's more valuable. This thing is more valuable. And you'll value those things instead of them being cheap to you in these circumstances. The penalty to attacking with two weapons became somewhat elevated with dexterity adjustments and fighting style with combat and tactics, but not used to the splat books. I use the core books. You got to remember, a lot of people forget the splat books did come out much later. And I'm someone who started with second edition, so I was stuck in the core books. And I have to admit, I, like many people, frowned at the splat books when they were coming out. They weren't all coming out at once, so we didn't have all the material just right at hand right away, right? So as far as dealing with two weapons, I just remember, hey, it says you could do a minus, but hey, you could use them. And yeah, you're right. Dexterity would help. That would bump it up. Maybe finding a magical weapon can make things a little easier. Finding items, all kinds of things can improve you. And I really believe in that too, like the idea of finding things and improving yourself in game. So I don't mind the idea of really buffied up characters as they're leveling up and they earn it and find that through treasures or something. I actually don't mind that to a point. Not to be careless with treasure, but that sort of buffed up character gimmick. I don't mind it, but I like it under the element where it's, you weren't given this at the start of the game and then it improves into that. You have to get in the game and there's no guarantee you can even be the superstar. Like you have the skills, you have all the potential starting off to be a superstar. You maybe you're a guy who can use magic, you can do this, you can do that. You have all the potential in the world. It's just, where is that going to get? Are you going to run into the lucky thing? Is luck going to play into it with your? Do you take advantage when you know when? So it's all these things have to line up, but they can. It is possible, even in the old school, to have some buffed up characters. But I don't mind that being achieved in a game as long as I'm making you earn it, not giving it to you up front. To me, then it's more like, it's okay. Okay, you got that. Those two items do work together, and with that combination, it doesn't break the game, but it does really make your character, really, really badass in combat, or really badass in this area of the game. So, like, maybe even almost to the point of overwhelming. I don't mind that whatsoever. To me, that's what I call earning it in the game instead of it being given to you. I don't like it to be happening all the time. So it's more like the stars have to line up right for you. And it doesn't mean all the stars line up right for every other player's character in the same game. Though it can. And I, as a DM, I try to make sure there's opportunities for those things, right? Important stuff. Okay, let's get on to henchmen and followers. Now, in new school gaming, henchmen and that can be a less important thing because your characters as a group can mostly handle themselves, or it's built to where it's really them out there more as a party doing the D&D thing, where the idea of the aid or the help or the henchmen or things like this are less important. If they do need extra aid, they might have mounts now and familiars and some other options that can take care of that. Back in old school, because death could be so brutal and so come to you so easy, even in second edition, in the older games, it gave you a good reason to go want to hire people. Like, let's be honest, meat shields, as some of us called them. People that could die, but your main character might make it through, right? Let's be honest. Or in some cases, really just, hey, you want to get a fair amount of treasure or, goods when you go out on an adventure. And if it's just you, well, that's, you need somebody else to carry some stuff, or you need somebody else to do something that makes your job more convenient. Or again, you need somebody to pick up a sword and fight in front of you, or at least fight alongside you in battle. You can hire henchmen. Henchmen are, the better your charisma is, the better it is. Like, henchmen, really, if you're going to hire them, it will tell you how many that you could probably hire. So it doesn't mean you can hire more. Charisma is just saying that, look, it's like influencing the DM. It's saying there's 7. So potentially 7. You should, if you go looking, this is around how many people you should be able to sort of draw it to you if they're available. And then there's a loyalty factor. The more charismatic you are, the more loyal instinctively upfront people will be to you. And henchmen, remember, there's a loyalty thing. So even the people you hire could backstab you, stuff like that. There's some complications in this little game of hiring people. That's henchmen. So henchmen usually says when you get here, the idea is it's telling the DM, if they hire people beyond here, the chance of loyalty with those people is really low. So if these guys' loyalty, because your charisma were, say, at 60 or whatever, I might knock it down for, like, say you're going for a guy who just extends over what your charisma says you should be able to get. And that guy is going to be more like 20. So that guy, be careful with the people you're hiring after that. I might give them, personality-wise, like a secondary chance. And I do this with NPCs when that is done. Where it's how cool are they, regardless of your lack of getting their loyalty from them. Because I'm a realist. Again, this put back into reality. I just do this. I give players a chance here, where I just say there's a chance the guy is cool anyway. That can happen in life, right? Where you could be easily taken advantage of, or somebody could easily turn their back on you, but their own personality decides, no, they don't do that. So they'll do the job they agree to. You can get luck on that sometimes, but there's a limit to how many guys I'll let you sort of roll the dice with on that before you're really just going to be hiring guys that are just blind. You don't know if they're going to be able to be trusted. Now, in old AD&D second edition, when you hit level 9, there's this thing called followers, right? It's a little different for wizards. They can build towers and draw apprentices. Their whole system functions slightly different from the rest, but the other classes can build locations. They can sort of settle down. As long as they can afford to settle down and build certain types of places, they can draw instant followers to follow them. So at level 9, there's a number of people if you have the right thing set up. So say if you're a thief and you have a large business building with rooms or whatever, like just a place for people to stay and work and whatever, you had that already set up. You get to level 9, you can basically say, I'm going to start running a guild, like a thieves guild, out of this business. And all you got to do is say, you're going to put the sort of feelers out for that through your DM, maybe a connection, maybe somebody you know. But once you put that out there, the followers should start coming to you. But you are providing a location. You've taken your funds in the game through your treasure, and you put it here on this building. The payoff is you get that. Now, not every character gets the same thing. For example, the warrior is meant to build a fort. They could build a castle, but really they only have to build a fort. But it has to be a fort. It has to be a military location for training, sleeping, and all that. And if you can build that up, they can draw in a small military to them. Warriors draw in a little bit more, but they're drawing in like warrior type characters to them. Thieves are obviously going to be drawing more thief type characters. There's a mix in each group. Like you can get rogues, and strangely around the Fighters Guild, fighter thieves, stuff like that. And you can get fighter thieves, ironically, again, over in the Thieves Guild. So that it can be a mixed bag with that. When you get over to the cleric thing, you're not going to get really thieves. Like it's very rare that a thief is going to be someone that's going to be pushed on you. The game really doesn't push that on you. So that would be a DM's choice moment if you get something like that. For the most part, you're going to get warriors, wizards. You can get wizards, not just clerics coming to your priesthood. But what you're doing is starting a church. So cleric has to build a church, at least have a church that is functional for their god. And as long as they have that at level 9, they can start drawing in followers that they get from level 9 for doing that. Oh, I love the stronghold mechanics too. And that's another thing with splat books. We'll get to that. It's all about second ed. The idea, some of the splat books suck, but the idea behind what the splat books were, it's almost like a great idea that gets thrown away. Like it's the baby getting thrown out with the bathwater because maybe the material in the book sucked, but the idea of what the books could have been was amazing. Like you get it's like, well, that would have had cool stuff. These books, if you think they brought the advancement to the game that you'd hope they would, the splat books for second edition would be legendary. They wouldn't be criticized. They'd be legendary. And people will say, you have to watch when you talk around nerds too. I'll say nobody uses the core rule changes from the splat books. And I'll hear a guy out there going, man, I heard Steven say, guys don't use the splat books. But they'll say it like that. And that's language to me is really important because that's not what I said. I use the splat books as far as taking kits, equipment, items, ideas, inspirations. But in all honesty, I avoided the rule changes to the core, right? It's just whatever the core was, to me, remained. And 99% of DMs I met, and I met a lot of DMs from online to in-person, very many over decades, because I'm a very social person, talking to people online, in person. And the second ed guys that I mingle with, because that's what I did, second edition. So these were the DMs I hung out with online. These were the guys I was chumming up with other DMs on Open RPG, stuff like this when it was back in the day. It was all second ed people in life and here. And 99% of the guys were like me. They simply didn't use the core rule change. Like if it changes a core element of the game, that change doesn't come. But using kits, equipment, skills, and other ideas from the splat books that weren't going to be a contradiction to what second edition was to us before they existed, we were fine with. And the splat books, for a lot of people that don't know, it wasn't like second edition came out and they were just all here. That all took time, and it was hard taking them in because they come in pieces. You get one here, one here. It's like, oh, okay, dude, no. It was terribly presented. The splat books were terribly presented to the market, and they were criticized. TSR was for that because They put the books out terribly. A lot of the material was copy and paste. So you find several books, if you really read through them, where it's the same, it's like the same text word for word. It's like they're just carrying text over and doing fillers for the books, right? So they get caught doing a bit of that. So there's a lot of criticism to the splat books when they happen. And they were just frowned upon because they had a bad reputation. So a lot of people actually, to be honest, a lot of guys weren't actually using the kits because they didn't have all the splat books coming out. Again, they weren't all there at once. I was a guy open to using that stuff, but a lot of guys didn't. Actually, a lot of guys didn't actually use the splat books. They kept using the core. And then later, some of them that stayed with second edition touched it. Many guys I know have still to this day ran pretty much the same way. They avoid the splat books. They stay with the core because of how the books came out. They just never rang with their gimmick. Okay, magic, a very important element in second edition AD&D. So magic, wizard spells, and cleric spells. Let me give you the basic how they work. You say some words, it can be instant, it could take more than a round, stuff like that. So it can be a prolonged casting, it might take more than a round. Casting spells are like in any other game. Each spell has a unique rule, sort of like its own little island, right? It's hard to say there's one set of generic rules for spells because some can be used like an attack, some can be used to make you fall asleep. It's like the variation of how magic is, each one is an island onto itself. But there are a few elements that are unique. So not every spell requires what we call an ingredient. But yes, in the old school, you have a book if you're a wizard, and you need an ingredient for a lot of spells, right? You need the ingredient to sacrifice the ingredient to cast a spell. Okay. With the wizards or with the clerics, it can be the same thing, but commonly they will need what they call their symbol. Like, so if they have a cross, they got to hold their cross or at least have their cross on them in some way, being represented, touching their skin, whatever, in a way that's okay with the DM. You talk to your DM about what that is. Some DMs say you got to hold the thing when you're doing it, so they'll make it, you got to hold it or it just doesn't work. You got to enforce it that way. But either way, you got to use a symbol. Sometimes you got to use ingredients, and sometimes you just don't. You just use a symbol and cast. Same thing with cleric magic as it is with wizard spells. They're islands onto their own. The variation in what they can do is really no different than wizard magic, to be honest, right? So there's similarities. Now, how do they use up magic and replenish? So after they cast their spells, what does a cleric in this game do to get their spells returned to them? How do they get it where they can cast later? They pray for their spells. So they pray to their god. There's rules for this, but a lot of DMs vary. Some of them will only make it a little bit of time. Some make you ride the whole thing out for long hours to get a spell, put back into your mind, and it's called memorizing. When you're a wizard, from the book. When you're the cleric, it's you pray for them. So with the wizard, they will read their book after they've used their spells, and they decide out of their book what spells they want to memorize, and there's a limit. So you might have 10 spells, but your wizard, when you read what they can do, they might only be able to cast 4, a day. Like, so you got to choose out of your 10 what 4, right? And yes, you can of course cast a spell more than once. So initially you could have 4 castings, but really you're only going to cast 3 spells. One of them you're going to cast twice. Okay. Now, what about really unique rules like vision and light, time and movement? I'll tell you the way I took it in and tell you the way I've noticed a lot of DMs over time I've talked to take it in the same way. Okay, so when you read that, there's a lot of really detailed stuff that if you actually pay attention to old school gaming, most of it isn't applied exactly as it's written. Almost nobody applies the exact stuff exactly as it's written. Here's the way I took it in was I read it and I get the common sense of what I was reading. Like, yeah, I get that. And then I knew to go into it that there was a concept I was going to figure out early, but it was worded out to me later. What's important for gaming sometimes, rulings over rules. And I've seen a lot of DMs over the time just use their common sense to say, At that many hundreds of yards, you can possibly see him. Or in some cases, they might think, well, there's fog. They might start applying their just own common sense. And when you really read what's down there, it's trying to give you some accurate stuff. So I guess if you feel a little out there, you're going to cover it. Some nerds, I know some nerds that would really get into these details. Many of the guys I knew were just like, look, we knew some basics. It's 500 yards is your like sort of max with some vision, stuff like this. Use your common sense when it comes to most of these things. Like how much is the darkness affecting the vision? How far can they see with this? Do you want to read exactly the 2 or 3 paragraphs and know exactly what to do and apply it as such? I haven't seen DMs personally back in the old school do it that way. They were like me. They'd read it. Yeah, it makes sense. Like get the common sense of it and then apply whatever you're applying that's close enough to that you can remember and it becomes consistent. And that's all you really got to do with players when you're ruling over rules, whatever you do in the game. If they accept the way you ruled on something, as every DM will tell you with any experience, I'm going to say something many of you have heard many times, just make sure you're consistent. Once players have accepted a ruling and they're cool with it, okay, that just has to be that same thing. It's called fairness. And the reason players want to know this is they want to know you're not playing favorites. They want to know when they're losing their character, if that ever happens, it was fair. Almost every player I know that has a problem with character death, the better times where they had not had a bad experience with it is when they feel like they're not cheated. If a player feels like they're not cheated when the character dies, like, man, that DM gave me every chance. When you get a player that feels like they've had their opportunities, there is a more, it might be sad losing the character, but there is a more acceptance of it and an ease of taking it in. Like they feel fair. It's always fair. Fairness is really important to players because in a way you are the PlayStation. Remember, when they're playing the game, they don't want glitches. If you judge something different here and here, that's a glitch. That's like them trying to play the game and it's guaranteed if you jump over here, you get over here. But oh, guess what? Depends on how the DM feels. Maybe if I jump over like last time, he'll say no this time, even though I'm doing the same thing. Right? So players want consistency in that way. It's once they understand it, now they know how to play your game. See, that's consistency in ruling, is understanding your ruling, is understanding how you rule, and then they can strategize with that in the way they approach playing your game. That's important for players. That consistency guarantees their strategies can work, or at least have an opportunity, whatever they're trying to push. One area that I find a lot of people just rulings over rules is they drop weapon speed, for example. I personally do not use weapon speed. I do use a simple initiative system. Sometimes it's been D6, sometimes it's D10, but it's simple. Highest goes first type of thing in old school. I'll be real with you. I've just never had players complain to me about that issue. Weapon speed is something you got to check, attach, apply. To me, it's just, why bother? Let's roll. Whoever gets the lucky draw of the hat gets to go first. To me, that's still that fairness level. And that's why I personally, when I've talked to players, they tell me that's all it is. It's the monsters aren't getting an advantage. They're not. And if there is an advantage, I will apply it. So it doesn't mean I won't personally say add a plus to your initiative roll, but we'll just ignore extending that plus from the weapon speeds. We'll keep it at even. If I think there's an advantage, it's a personal plus you get to start adding from the advantage that is obvious in the scene, like high ground, or you're behind your enemy, which might be more like auto attacks, less than rolling initiative, right? But that's my point. Basically, what I'm saying is it doesn't mean you can't get bonuses with initiative, but it's less about weapon speed and more about your environment and your situation. So it comes down to your cleverness and strategy and approach and getting yourself in a situation. Do that, you get advantages, bang. And that advantage goes to your. Now, races in AD&D 2nd edition. Okay, now there's some extended, and we'll talk about a few of those, but the base and the core books are this: human, elf, half-elf, dwarf, gnome, halfling. We say that again: human, elf, half-elf, dwarf, gnome. Okay, if you go to the extended books, there's a few others. The popular ones I know are like half-orc and Kenders. There's a sort of weird version of humanoids in Ravenloft. I forget the pronunciation. I said it last time. You'll know what I mean right away. They're a unique type of human. They're almost considered their own type of race. Those three I find interesting. The tieflings were introduced, and I am working on a version of that for my game. I've done some videos on that for 2nd edition. But the tieflings, ironically, were introduced in 2nd edition, not in the WotC versions of D&D. So you're really first meeting the tiefling. Some people might even say it goes further back, but I'm just saying it's more prominently it shows up with 2nd edition. And I think why is because a lot of the guys that worked on 2nd edition carried over to WotC. So some of the staff that went from working on the 2nd edition went right to WotC and worked on 3rd edition. And so some of the ideas I think carried over, like ironically, tieflings, right? Carried over. I don't mind them, but I like the way old D&D represented them. I don't like the version of tieflings they have for the new WotC game, because in the old one, it doesn't treat them like a race. It treats them like a individual, and you're not part of a group or a race or anything. You can curse like your mother has had sex. Sorry, there's a connection issue. Your mother has had sex with a demon or something like that, or your father has sex with a demon. Here you are, you're half a demon and you're cursed. And to me, the tiefling was more about the individual and the individual story with that character, because it wasn't about a race. WotC turned the tieflings into what I see as a race of beings, where tieflings in old school were more presented as just some individual cursed being that was unique, right? Even though there was another demon that had sex with an orc, and there were 2 half orcs, the 2 demon orcs would be very different from each other. Like the idea of the tiefling orc and this tiefling orc, the variation between them would still be so different that they wouldn't be here's tiefling orcs and they're all part of the tiefling orc race, right? So there wouldn't be guaranteed similarities, because the demon effect on the bodies can be various with tieflings, right? But that's how they're presented in the old school. I prefer them that way, honestly. I think they're more mysterious. It's not about me trying to have an agenda or win an argument there. I just look at the tieflings and go, man, if I was a player, that is cool. If I'm going to play the demon with the mysterious shit, if I want to play the evil character like that, or some hint of evil, or even maybe the demon who wants to be good, whatever story I want to play, that mysterious idea that you're cursed and it wasn't your fault, right? And you're looking at something more like a sort of curse on you, or you play a character who decides, no, it's great, I'm powerful. I'm not cursed, I'm empowered, right? But the tiefling is just such a variation of how you could approach it. The new tiefling is just race, like orcs. Like, that's not what they were. That's not the tiefling I thought when they first started pitching and watching. I actually thought it was still the mysterious one. I had no idea by the time I get to Baldur's Gate 3 and checked out when I got the 2024 Player's Handbook for the new 5e or 5.5. I was like, you mean they're a race? Like they're treated like a race? That's insane. I don't like them as a race at all. So there you go. Now, classes for AD&D 2nd edition. Now, look, there's something called, we'll get to that, but I'm not going to name out all the kits because we'd be here all night. 2nd edition classes were pretty straightforward. Core classes: fighter, the warrior, fighter, paladin, ranger. Pretty straightforward for D&D. When you get to the wizard, there's mage, specialist wizard, and illusionist. Now, illusionist is somewhat form of a specialist. It is, but they're very unique. The mage is sort of like your typical wizard, like your very generic wizard from the old myth, right? Maybe your base Merlin with like a certain, there's your spellcaster, right? The specialist mage is someone who deals with different types of schools of magic, like abjuration, alteration, conjuration, summoning, enchantment, charm, greater divination, illusion, invocation, evocation, necromancy, and lesser divination. These are the different type of schools that you could pick from, and you could have your mage specialize in one of these things. And when they do, they become a specialist wizard. Oh, let's not even talk about bullywugs. There's a monster I love, but I didn't like how they were presented all the time. I sort of did, because as a DM, I'm not trying to be sneaky, but I'd have them come up this river. I remember one encounter, a group is by the lake, and all the players are there, and they're in the wagon. They stop by the wagon, or they stop by this, like, not lake, but sort of like a small river, but it's a little deep. And they can hear this noise, this weird, it's almost like a buzzing, humming noise. But it seems to be coming from somewhere, like, as it gets closer, it's like coming like from the water. And they just start seeing these bubbles, and they're like, what the fuck is going on here? Right? No idea what's going on. They see these bubbles, they can hear this boom. What's happening is there's these bullywugs coming out, singing. Right? They're humming. And they're doing that because it's sort of like how the general is keeping them in march. Why are they in a marching order? Because it's a military group, and they're going to attack, and they have no idea what's coming. Launch themselves into the air and then come diving down with spears jabbing them into you. They can go right through you and everything. Now imagine a bunch of these bullywugs out of nowhere that you thought were the little cartoon weak characters. Without the DM playing any tricks, I gave the time in the world like to react to this stuff. They were slow that day. It was just, they just weren't fast. Like, what's going on there? And like, I'm like, okay. And I'm delaying. So I'm not a DM who speeds in to make the cool thing happen. I don't give a shit. I'm not trying to beat you. So I don't care if the clever attack just ends up just collapsing because you were faster and broke it down before it could even start. I'm completely fine with giving the player that if they can figure it out. Sorry for having connection issues, but I don't mind giving up to players if they figure it out and bust something a bad guy is doing. But if I give you the time, shit's going to happen. These bullywugs come jumping out of the water with the spears, jabbing in. And two of the characters got killed because they were natural 20s. Right? Just enough natural 20s. It's one of those times where you're just like, man, I can't believe I rolled that many natural 20s. And when you say that, that means someone's dying in old school D&D. It's like, shit, the monsters rolled like 5 20s, dude. Oh, shit, who's dead? I mean, if you're talking old school group, it's the first assumption is that many? All right, who's dead? Who got killed? It's just like, you know it. You've given up on the idea that it's not happening. You're just trying to figure out, so who's the one that got stabbed? Was it me? Anyway. So when it comes to the books, let me give you a rundown on what the splat books are. The core books that came originally were the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master Guide, Monster Manual. The other books that came out for the splat books were the Arms and the Equipment Guide, the Magic Tome, and then there was a book of Ships and Sea. Another one called the Castle Guide. These are the castle books that we were talking about there, Black Rose. The Castle Builder, another companion book to that. Then there was the complete book sets, where there was like the complete books of dwarves, gnomes, and halflings, humanoids, barbarians, bards, druids, fighters, paladins, priests, psionics, rangers, thieves, wizards, necromancers. Then there was the final little set of ones before we got to the final, which is the player options, combat and tactics, skills and powers, spells and magic. And the last book part of that splat book set was high level campaigns. There you go. There's your splat books. What I'm not going to name for you is every module out there for second edition. There's shitloads. You can always look into them. We'll get into the realms for second edition in a second, which I will be covering more of those going forward, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Not to mention the plasmoids and the other weird races. My God, what the second edition is so just awesome for, especially with the splat books, just so awesome. So I've already covered Ravenloft and Dragonlance, but I want to give you the idea of how many worlds were built with a second edition version of them. Just to give you the idea how extended this edition was, and I don't think it gets enough love. So for the other worlds is Planescape, Dark Sun, Spelljammer, Birthright, Mystera, Blackmar, Greyhawk, and if you count their old worlds, Al-Kedum or whatever it is, and the Oriental Adventures have their own little worlds built into those adventures. So pretty much other realm books. The next one I'm covering is, now check this out. So Saturday is the Forgotten Realms. I know, but we're only going to cover it from a TSR second edition era version of it. Then we're going to cover one I hope everyone's excited about is Dark Sun. So it'll be Forgotten Realms, and then I'm going to do a stream on Dark Sun. So if you've only heard about Dark Sun, we're going to do the type of dive into Dark Sun that you need to understand the stuff you didn't understand. Right? Sort of bring you knowledge of it to go, I get it now, right? Okay, good. Here's an area. I promised psionics. So in old second edition psionics are mental power. Psionics, the person uses their own energy mixed with some outside source to call upon these abilities. So the idea is you're using your own energy. It's not magic, but some sort of form of odor energy in the world, and you're calling upon these powers, these psionic powers. Now, there is a thing called PSPs. These are the things people have when they use powers. They stand for psionic strength points. That's what monsters have and characters can have, and these are how many points you have at any one time. So you could use these up, like call upon the powers that use, and each power is going to use some of these psionic points, psionic strength points. How many you have is based on, well, for characters, it's based on their ability scores. After using these, they will start into your character will start into a recovery mode. It replenishes the powers over time, 3 to 4 hours before you get some of your points back, right? And if you sleep or if you rest, the more rest you take, the more restful you are, the faster that recovers. So regeneration of the energy is what happens after you use it. Okay, using psionic powers. Power scores. Like a proficiency, every psionic power that the character has a score. So, and proficiency, if you do have to do a dice, you gotta roll that number or below. So in the case of the skill, it's better to have a higher number. So say you had a high ability score related to the skill, you get a high number for that skill, say. So when you roll a d20, if it was the skill's at 17, you roll a 15, you succeed. When you go to use a psionic power, it's the same thing. If the number was 16 on it, you roll 16 or lower for success. Power checks. When a character wants to use a psionic power, the player makes a psionic power check by rolling the 1d20. This is what I'm talking about. These are the checks. The number is rolled equal to or less than the power score, the character succeeds. So it's like less, better. Psionic powers function like magic. Some are instant, some are continuous, and some can even require an attack dice roll. There'll even be a thing set up for it. If you're looking at a monster and you see this DIS/SCI/DEV. If you see that slash on a monster, I'm going to tell you what these things mean, because people have seen these for years when they're looking at like mind flayers, and they might not understand if you don't understand psionics. It's disciplines. That's the DIS is disciplines. The SCI is sciences, and the DEV is devotions. And these are the areas. So each one of these areas have the powers, that the psionic powers. So some are, some are disciplines, some are sciences, and some are devotions. So that is psionics right there. Psionics is based on having these power points when you're building up the character and using psionics in the game. If a character can have psionics, it's based on these points. Then they have these abilities. When you get to the psionics handbooks, there's a way of building up psionic characters. But if you're just using them in the monsters where they use psionic powers, understanding the disciplines, sciences, and devotions, that's the type of powers they're using, right? And they can be using Thacos and everything. They're using something similar to the system. When you extend it past the monster manual and get over to Sonic's Handbook, this is where you get where you can play the player, the character who is a psionics using person. Okay, the only area I totally didn't exactly cover with these skills is because when I say skills, there is a set of skills that are unique. I'll bump this in at the end. These skills, they're unique. They don't work like non-weapon proficiencies. They're not like typical skills. And with a D100 system, pretty much like a percentage. I say D100, but percentage you can use 2D10s. You roll the number or lower on the D100 or the 2D10s, and you succeed. So again, higher, better, right? So you want to build those numbers. The numbers that go along, say, pickpocketing, hiding in shadows, these rogue type thieves skills are not things you can just find in the normal non-weapon proficiency area. These are skills tailored only for the thief character or the rogue character when you take one of those, right? Like take a bard or a thief. So just that's, you got to check that stuff. Right? Rangers have some rogue type abilities you can check out. Now, kits. I don't know how my connection is doing tonight. I hope it's not too bad. I hope it's not like just dying all night. But we're in the last couple minutes here. Let's cover kits. Let's talk about what kits are. See, I'm someone who likes to use the core classes. The basic fighter, the basic wizard, the basic cleric, and the basic thief. Like, I like the basic classes. And I love the kit ideas when they came in as flat books. Kits were taking a class and given an extension. So like the ranger, like an extension of the fighter or something like that, right? Imagine if you could just build your own type of specialized fighter. Like there's the ranger, but you don't want the ranger. Well, here's these kits. There might be, like, say you go to the fighter's handbook, there'll be fighter class kits. There's cleric class kits. And these kits are to, in a way, allows you to customize the character. And I like that more sometimes than having a bunch of options. Like you're already customized into the ranger. Like I like the idea of giving you some base where there is some direction. You're a wizard, you're a guy who casts spells, but what kind of wizard you are, I'd rather be that more customized by you. And to say you have to be a necromancer, just like, you sort of just want to, customize that in your own way. And I like the idea that kits sort of give you way more options and way more ways to pitch a DM to sort of make your own ranger, if you get what I'm saying, like the extension of the fighter class. Again, sorry if the connection is just killing. If I find there's too many glitches tonight, I'll definitely do just an extension video for second edition for just people out there. I tried to cover all this properly. I know the storm because I'm getting hit directly by that cold storm. It is freezing. It is as bad as they say it is. It's not nice going outside at night at all. The wind is up. It's killer here where I'm at. I sort of knew it could affect. It's just bad timing. Last week was the same thing. Storm on the night of streaming, right? And Restream just does not seem to like me when I hit certain storms. It becomes very sensitive for whatever reason. I'm in Nova Scotia, Canada. I don't know what that means. Like if I'm getting bumped for that reason, but we're supposed to have good connection here, which confuses me. I checked it out, but Restream, every time I seem to get a storm, seems to want to glitch around on me. And it's like I have no control. I have everything that should be performing well on my end. I've done a lot of these streams where it performs perfectly. You can go back and watch them. So it's not like I've done something new, right, to make these worse, or it's just maybe just the bad timing on storms, right? A couple storms in a row and I'm disappointed. Last week I did the Ravenloft one and I felt like it killed it. It killed it because I did a lot of work on that, and then just at the end there I'm needing to do another video to cover this stuff, because if you go back and listen to the stream, the storm hits that night, man. I have this whole thing put together. I hit the park. It's good stuff. But it was just a glitchy stream. So there's like important elements I'm mentioning. They're just, pew. I'm like, oh man. I hate it as a content creator when you're having a hot night, you're hitting it, You're hitting it out of the park on one of these live streams, and you that thing where it's just out of your fucking control, right? Like you brought your charisma, you brought everything that should bring every viewer to the table that's enjoying your content that night. Yet they're going to get annoyed with the glitches and leave you, and you have no control over that. So disappointing, because I have a lot of work into that to please my supporters. I want to make sure you guys are happy when you leave here, right? Yeah, occasionally glitchy. 97% good tonight. I'm glad to hear that, Black Rose, that we had more than 97% consistency tonight compared to last week. I'd rather it be 100% honest. I think probably even now I get these warnings, so I don't know if you're getting hit with a glitch when I'm seeing the warning, because I know what the warning is now. I get used to seeing it when I've had these issues before. It's a yellow bar that comes down for like a moment, and it will show you if you're having difficulties. And if it comes down for a moment and goes back up, it's like, wait, I guess you had a bump for a moment. I'm like, well, do they know that? Is that bump I'm seeing a glitch? Is it me like slowing down? I don't know. Well, we're in the witching hour. I've covered the basic stuff you need to know for second edition of the game, top to bottom. I told you what worlds I'm going to be doing, which is Forgotten Realms, TSR, second edition, the next stream, and the one after that's going to be Dark Sun. Now, I'm going to admit to you, I'm doing every second edition world this year on streams, specials like this, right? Some of them I have not personally really had a bunch of experience with. I've played them all to a degree as a player. I haven't DM'd them all, so I will admit some of them I have no experience with, but I'm going to learn about them. I'm going to be very honest when I do those streams, but I'm going to do my best to inform myself and then be able to inform you what was. I don't know a lot about Mystera, but I know a lot of guys do. I know Mystera is a favorite world for a lot of guys that did second edition. I did so much homebrewing of my own world that after a few commercial worlds like Ravenloft, Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms, and just hanging around with the others, and playing a bit with Mystera with another DM, I just spent personally more time in stuff, right? Yes, Witching Hour, Black Rose. It's open. It's been open all night. It's not a private chat, so anybody who's something could have said something all night long. Just nothing stopping them. But other streams or other people talking that get some people busy, which is fine. I know the deal. Some people will come watch your shit later because I know there's some other people on tonight. Not offended by that. Just I don't think anybody's trying to step on my toes. I mean, this is more random for me than anything. So that happens. There are streams for gaming almost every night. So in a sad way, sometimes it depends on who, but the audience can get stretched out here and there between people. I'm not so much of an effect on that because I'm not going to compete with certain people, right? Just ain't happening. So I'll get some views later on this stream, but I hope the people that were enjoyed it beyond the 3% glitchiness, which I'm very disappointed about. I knew to warn everybody because I sort of knew it was coming, the storm, like with the cold snap. It's the power's been glitchy in some areas where I'm living, and it just I can't tell you why I know that's going to be a problem. I just knew it was going to be, right? Witching Hour is just like, hey, if somebody brings something up, here. Yeah, I'm going to cover the deck of many things tomorrow, and what I'm doing with my game Inspired and the tarot cards, some other things that Black Rose asked me to look into. But overall, that's it. That's tomorrow going to be the deck of many things. But again, when I do stuff, I try my best to remind people it's based on TR. And if I do ever do something that includes WotC material, I'll be very specific about it because when I talk about D&D, I want people to assume I mean old. I want them to be used to that with me. If I talk about this, I mean old. If I'm going to talk about WotC, anything WotC's ever done, I'm going to have to first announce that I'm talking about WotC, because I hope people understand that I'm really not talking about this, right? Like, I did some 5e, but I took time to WotC D&D. I never gave 3rd edition time or 4th edition. I understand some of the elements, what people liked about it. more gamers, how they might like 4th edition. I seen handout, so it was like, it makes sense, but I just never touched the material. I never got attracted to it. So unlike other people, I just never played 3rd. I never DM'd 3rd. I never touched 4th. Like I had so much going on in life that unlike other people, I'm as these games are coming out. So as 3rd edition is coming out, I'm like going into my teens and I'm doing other things, not just gaming, right? So the importance of purchasing and keeping up with the hobby that way become less important to me because I had so many other activities going on in life, hustling, making money, doing that work, messing with people, life, just being young, right? Being foolish, running around, being busy. When people said, "Are you going to learn 3rd edition?" I was like, "Dude, I don't got time for that. I didn't have time in my life." And so I married that idea. And I just switched over because I never liked what I'd seen anyway. So it's when I talk about WotC stuff, I try my best to inform myself, right? And I think I did a pretty good job because I criticized it a few times and then I got after myself and said, it's not fair. I haven't done the game. I haven't played the game. Why am I so harsh? And then I ran a campaign. So just to prove the point, I went and ran the campaign and then I came out and gave it my critical views and my review pretty much overall in the game after I ran it. And most of the things I had originally thought were just simply true. It's like I have enough experience with the gaming that I sort of know what I'm saying, but instead of being too cocky about it, when I went and ran it, well, I guess it played out that way. Slow combat, boring stuff, right? And combat is such a core element of the game that if you kill combat in D&D, especially in the 5e, because there's so many things that are just like, man, all these powers are cool, but if the combat sucks, how cool is it? Right? If you're bored with the element that makes that thing cool, that you have the power thing, but you're like, I mean, to me, it kills the whole experience. To me, the combat should be fast, exciting, on the edge to go along with the power. But here I am with this battle, right? I feel the chaos and the quickness and speed of combat. I like the chaos of it. Right? I like knowing what's going on. I even like players to somewhat not be confused. I want them to be clear. I'll keep communicating things to them well so they'll understand. I'll make it that they understand. But I like it when players feel a bit of that chaos. And I like players to get used to it with a character. Like, you've been playing the fighter. You guys have been through a few battles, but the guy in my game knows what it's like to be on the edge. It's not like he's less on the edge, but it's just the guy's going to get more comfortable with the edge as he goes forward, right? He goes from ducking behind the rock to he's the guy standing up beside the rock watching the new player's character behind the rock going, dude, you can stand up. We'll be okay. These guys can't shoot for shit. Like, I want that type of attitude. You know what I mean? Like a guy who's been through a little bit of rough shit in my game. So it's not that he's less concerned with the threat. It's just that, from experience and wisdom, you start really understanding it. You get tougher, you get stronger, instead of the idea that the pressure of combat is any less. Like, it remains the same, but you become used to it. So I like the chaos of fast combat. I hate slow combat because I find slow combat just doesn't put that pressure on you, right? Not in a game where combat is usually, it swings the player character's way more times than it swings the other way, right? Like, in a way that if you're talking about balance, there's no real balance in that game at all. At least that's what I found. The balance they tell you is an illusion. It's almost like saying something has balance to cover up the fact that it has issues, right? Like the problem is it's not a balance, it's issues, right? That's the problem with 5e, my personal take. No game is perfect. 2nd edition had issues, but the ease of change and adjustment and the acceptance of that judgment by the community of 2nd edition people, players, DMs, it was like that worked. Where you don't got that type of just all around openness in that community. It doesn't mean there's not individuals making changes, doing things, being unique, having unique players, be open-minded. It's just that part of that 5e world is a minority. We're back in the 2nd edition time. That was the mindset of 99% of people doing 2nd ed. So where you might have just like a pinch of open-minded people that make changes in 5e, that was the entirety of 2nd edition. That was the entire crowd of open-mindedness to adjustments and changes and everything. So when I say we didn't use the core rules of the flat books. Don't ever misunderstand. Second edition people were all about adapting all the extras that didn't ruin anything. We were all about adapting. Adapting was easy. Adapting the best of the stuff was fun because there was a lot of garbage in the flat books. You read through it, it was awful, right? So we just learned that it wasn't all awful. So it's not all awful. What can you do with it? And in some cases, there might be ideas that themselves aren't good, but the concept is good enough that you could take the concept and do something yourself, right? So it inspired a lot of ideas. It inspired a lot of creativity, but it was never going to sell those books, and they were terribly put out. So second edition was a powerhouse of a game that, in my opinion, it never got advertised right. It comes out and it doesn't put the company out of business. It's going out of business, and it's not going to get its lifespan. I still to this day look at the OSR, and I see that it's mostly AD&D or OD&D, like the AD&D first edition. I'm like, and then I see like one or maybe two clones of second edition, really like somewhat out there. I'm like, man, the OSR should not have been led by the AD&D first edition game or the OD&D game. I wish that one of the core games that would have been the majority of what you've seen coming out of that was second edition. Because to me, the OSR was an opportunity to see if second edition could sing when it wasn't given an opportunity to properly sing. Instead, my criticism of what they did was they went back to games that drove people away from TSR. And it doesn't mean the minority that stayed with them didn't love them and religiously love them. I get it. But there's a reason tournament play failed, and there's a reason Palladium and the Vampire games got a big pick-me-up. They didn't have communities or buyers back then, and most buyers stuck to certain games. So if you had someone start buying from Palladium that left D&D, that's permanent money gone. And it's hard to get those customers back when you bring out second edition. And the second edition was more like we're trying to save the company with it. We're not trying to tear the company down. The company's going out of business. The second edition is more like we're going to roll the dice and see if we can put out something and save the company. And when that didn't work, that's when you get the splat books, the copy and paste, the desperation. Well, there was a lot of good stuff, but there was just some material that was copy and paste from books, ideas, mention over again, mention here, and what you start realizing is really they're trying to sell the books for double what they're worth on the market. So if they gave you enough material in the book that should be worth maybe $18, I mean, when they first bought the splat books out, I remember they were costing $41. You read through the book and you're like, man, that's a little over $10 worth of material. Some of it's copy and paste. And so you're paying $41 for this thing. And the reason they're overcharged, and they did that with the splat books. See, this is part of the history of the splat books people forget. They overcharged for the splat books. It was just terrible. They did what the Sega did. Now, Sega, the company, came back with movies and other things later on. But Sega did this really stupid thing competing with Nintendo. It got desperate and started making everything for sale, everything cheap. But it became considered too cheap to be wanted after a while. It became throwaway. It's too much of this. Where like you're just going to see Segas everywhere, Genesis in the garbage. And you did. You seen exactly that with a bunch of cheap material. That killed the company because it devalued them. They lost customers because the customers stopped taking a company like that serious. This is, to me, TSR had a similar run, right? They get to that splat book stage and they're going all Sega. They're going, we're just throwing everything at the wall trying to save our company. Well, there you go, Black Rose. That's exactly it, right? It's a lot of copy and paste. And it's like, they're going to get criticized. Oh, again, there was a lot of original good stuff in there. See, that's the dilemma. That's the pain in the ass, too. Like, you see the good stuff, and you're like, dude, why do you have to do this over here? Like, if this is the standard you set here, and you know that's what we want it here, too. And what they were doing was doing, like, the Fighter's Handbook. that was $38. Not 41, but it was 38. It was one of the many $38 books. Again, with most of the material copy pasted. A money grab. And it was a cheap money grab like Sega, and it never worked to put TSR. In my opinion, that's what ended TSR, because they were pretty much gone. And that was it for TSR. So to me, second edition never got the fair shake. And what people forget is second edition lasted for 10 more years at the top, being played by tons of people online and in life. And even when third edition came out, people forget that. I mean, it's still, second edition still goes to this day, but for the first 6 years that Wizards of the Coast had the Dungeons and Dragons third edition and more out, second edition was actually being played as much for the first 6 years. Like if you went to places online where they're playing the games, you could open RPG. By the third year of WotC's third edition, second edition is still 80% of the games. Because third edition needed to come together, bring people that were sour about old school D&D, new customers, and they had to learn the game, they had to learn these processes, they have to bring people in there to DMs, and it took that community to sort of develop itself carelessly over so many years. But for that reason, we already have a community that's already well developed by the time they exist. So for that reason, second edition just keeps going strong, very strong going forward. And for 6 years, as far as still, we were half the games. Still, there were more second edition DMs, right? In the first 6 years, there was more TSR second edition DMs than there were WotC DMs in total, right? So we outnumbered them in DMs. We had just as many players. We kept up with them. It just at one point with nothing new with second edition, and some people getting older, leaving online, leaving certain worlds, it gets degraded. And then here's what happened to the old school. YouTube and Facebook. It killed them. It killed a lot of old school guys because they love to have control over the conversation online. And what soured a lot of guys were they ban you off every old school forum if you didn't agree with the majority. And they ban you for being a prick too. And sometimes you can be a prick and get banned. Sometimes they're banning you for unfair shit just for having a gaming opinion that they don't agree with. And they would do that consistently. And when YouTube finally came out, they realized, shit, that guy can say whatever he wants, and we can't ban him. Right? We can't get rid of him off of YouTube. Right? So that broke the back for a lot of guys. It just meant finally guys like me who might have been censored out of the conversation were finally allowed back into the conversation, and nobody could stop me. That's what YouTube and things like that meant for me was, oh, wow, I've been censored on mostly every forum for very bullshit reasons for the last 3 years. So I've been erased out of the entire, I was on the online community, on the forums, on the Open RPG, very popular, very well known, ran tons of games, all good stuff. And then at one point, they tried to crucify my character before I really got into YouTube. And the way they tried to crucify my character was to try to erase me. And so on every forum, I just got banned, like completely for forums I had never even been to. I go visit, banned, never said anything. There's no reason. I never said anything more raunchy than any other fucking nerd said on any of these things. So there wasn't like some, oh, you went overboard and everyone else was just like, you're crazy. No, just being a nerd. I had debates, arguments, stuff like that, but nothing more raunchy than the worst shit you could hear from a nerd on some forum. I got banned on everyone after 3 years of being banned on all those forums and just being erased out of existence. I show up on YouTube. I got to tell you, the day I did the first video, it was just hype because all the guys that hated me right away were fucking just pissed. They were fuming at the mouth that I was able to now start talking again and be heard again by people in the old school online. Finally, I had a voice. And the people that had an iron fist that controlled the conversation forever in the old school online, they lost that control. They lost it with Facebook and YouTube. So the forums, I sort of liked them at one point, but the reason I had such a bad experience with the old gaming forums is it was like communism. It was like walking into just pure fucking censorship. Like the conversation in the tabletop role-playing game hobby in the old school was so controlled that there were certain opinions, just gaming opinions, that were no harm to anyone. But since most of the old school didn't agree with the opinion, It just would not appear on their forum. They would delete the post. They would ban the guys that would say it. And you'd be like, well, did that guy cross any lines? Nope, they banned that guy for that. But it gets confusing because you can see them ban people for being bad and just assume all people are being banned for the same reason until you look into it and realize, no, they're just banning people to control the conversation. They did that for years. And when YouTube came around, here I am, baby. I'm ready to say all the shit they don't want to hear. I was happy to say it. To this day, I still say it. Right? I still say the shit a lot of those guys don't want to hear. It's not because I say it to piss them off. I just say it because I do have that opinion. It's just different than theirs, and they don't like hearing it. If they did like hearing it, they wouldn't have banned everyone with the fucking opinions for years on the forums and control the conversation that way. So when the iron fist of control was lifted, thank you, YouTube. For all the censorship YouTube did later, they did that good. Just at that moment, at least it gave me a voice. It allowed me to reappear back into the tabletop role-playing game hobby and exist again instead of being a myth, right? Because I had a good reputation, so it soured it for 3 years. That they destroyed it because I had such a great reputation, and they just said, we're just going to erase you. And it was just showing me the power that some people that really in life, they're nerds, or like they'd be the guys that we spit on and picked on. They're not popular, but here they get to pretend they're cool guys. And in that ego, they get to take a guy like me and they get to feed their ego by controlling me, by stopping me from speaking, by having power here, social power they wouldn't have in the real world, right? Some of the guys, when they get that power here, they get high off it. They do. And the guys on the forums, they get high off it. These were just old typical nerds nobody took serious, but now they were moderators. Now they were the owners of the conversation land, right? And with that power came big head, big egos, and they would abuse the fuck out of it, completely controlling the dialogue and conversation for years online. There were certain opinions, weren't debated for years, weren't talked about for years. You weren't even allowed to bring them up. Do you know they made the forums so separate that most of the old school forums, you weren't even allowed to talk about 3rd edition? And guess what? Some of the 3rd edition guys ended up starting to do that same thing in response, saying, you can't come here and mention old TSR-D&D or we'll ban you. Like, that's how crazy the nerds were over controlling the dialogue. You weren't even allowed to talk about 3rd edition on some of the old school stuff. They ban you for just mentioning it. You mentioned 3rd edition, I watch guys get banned straight up for the most common opinions. Now, it didn't happen forever. That did change over time. They eased up on that. But early on, for like the first 2 years of WotC, 3rd edition, if you went on certain old school forums, you were instantly banned for saying the most milquetoast thing about 3rd edition D&D. Say, you know what, guys? I think I like this element from 3rd edition, right? This one's not too bad. You get banned by guys that people were taking serious. And in some cases, some people still take them serious. And guess what's sad? They still have the mindset that led them to banning that guy for that reason. So they're still the same losers they were so many years ago, and they haven't improved or become better people. That's just who they are. So the forums were absolute garbage. I'm glad YouTube came out and freed up the dialogue so we could finally speak and not be censored, like having the conversation controlled. And I know some guys just for years, because I could, speak freely, they were bitter with me. Some guys still to this day, I've done nothing to them. They just didn't like what I had to say like 15 years ago. And if you ask them to this day, well, what do you think of Steven? They'll talk about me like they hate me. I'm like, man, dude, it's been 15 years. It's one opinion I had about a game. But nerds can be like this. They can hold on to shit forever. Like 15 years. I know guys that will just fume at the mouth at the mention of my name. And I'm like, I don't know why they're that mad. Like, dude, okay, I'm not a big fan of miniatures. Why are you this mad about that? It's to this day, I remember years I tried to logically put it together in my head. Why are they mad about that? Like, dude, I just, again, the miniature thing still to this day, because it made me a lot of enemies. I made a 3-minute video that made me so many enemies, and just it turned my world upside down with so many people on here. I made a 3-minute video just saying, look, I have nothing against miniature gameplay, but I prefer theater of the mind, and I think it produces something better. Now, I'm telling people, this is my personal experience. I'm not telling you what to do, and I mentioned the video to be nice. Hey, maybe you enjoy the miniatures better than I do, and maybe you get something out of them that I don't, and that I don't see. So I sort of square the circle. I'm not saying I'm right for you, or that I am saying I'm absolutely right. It's just this is why I think this. It's a very basic video. Why am I doing it? I spent about a year listening to about 500 videos where people said, theater of the mind sucks, it's trash, miniatures are great. And everyone went like this. That was the audience every time. Theater of the mind sucks, it's no good for combat, it sucks and it's stupid, miniatures are great. The audience, and so I watched that about 500 times. So after about 500 times, the same guy say, theater of the mind sucks, it's trash, you're trash if you do it, you're trash if you say you could do big combat with it, you suck, it's broken, it doesn't work. They could say all that, have everyone cheer, no death threats, no drama, no one hating them, no one crucifying them for years, no one painting a false picture about them for 6 years, trying to destroy their reputation on here, no one chasing their game down and giving it false reviews and bullshit reviews. Nobody doing that to people that said they liked miniatures more than Theater of the Mind, that Theater of the Mind sucked and was trash. Do you know how many times I heard the people that were pissed off at me say Theater of the Mind is trash, say that people that do it are stupid, and that they say it plainly all the time. 500 videos from old school guys. I watched all that and went, you know what, after 500, do I hear any counter? So I looked, and maybe there were, I just never found a counter video with an alternative view where someone was going, hey, guess what, man? Actually, I like Theater of the Mind. Actually, I think your miniatures sort of suck. Like, nobody was doing that. And I was like, well, and understand, I did not do this. People think I did this video to pick some fight with people. I did it. And I honestly thought to myself, oh, they'll be a little ticked off about this. I'll hear about it. They'll reply. We'll have a back and forth. It'd be cool. I'll get them worked up on this, but they'll reply. They've done all this shit. It should be cool. And I really thought it was going to be fine. I did the 3-minute video, put it out saying what I said, and then I get death threats. I had a guy come to one of my jobs, wanted to hurt me. I had to get the cops here to get that guy removed. And want to know why? Because I said that I like Theater of the Mind more than miniatures. So a guy showed up in my work to hurt me. I had people tell me they were going to kill me online, right? Legit, for saying I like Theater of the Mind over miniatures. Every GM and a player with a hint of wisdom or experience must be aware that every table has different preferences and wishes. Even after 30 plus years, I still play with and without miniatures. Yeah. But my point was, I didn't care about that. That's not even that. Like, I'm with you, Black Rose. But that wasn't the real point to mine. Mine was just hey, is it okay to put a bit of balance out with the content? Like, is it okay to balance out this? Like, okay, we have fucking thousands of people saying pure Theater of the Mind sucks. The people that do it are trash, and calling them trash. I mean, just calling them crude stuff, saying they're fucking no good, everything else. I'm like, dude, there's thousands of those, and there's no pushback. I don't think it hurts if I put a 3-minute video saying I don't like miniatures. But that led to 6 years of me being crucified in the old school tabletop role-playing game community online. And most of the shit you hear about me today all comes from that video and the anger created by that video. I tell people about that video because that was the trigger. That's the trigger of all the lies told about me going forward, the character reputation destroyed. So if you ever hear somebody go, we hate him because he was this, whatever the fuck, they'll give some false label, say I did something, say I'm guilty of something I'm not. No, when you really dig back, where did they initially get angry before they come up with the accusation that I did something horrible? The anger was they heard a gaming opinion. It made them mad. They want to attack me. You can't just be that brutal to someone over a gaming opinion. So what do? You got to come out and say that guy's bad for this reason. And it's like Antifa calling an innocent person a Nazi so they can justify hitting them. That's what some of these old school guys do with me. They'll give me a bad label. They'll make up a lie about me or paint a false picture about me, say I'm a bad person. So just like that Antifa member, they're calling me pretty much a Nazi so they can justify hitting me. But that's the reaction because he wants to be able to hit him because that guy's speaking freely. But if he's not a Nazi, you can't justify hitting a guy for speaking freely in reality. You can't even really justify even if he was. But either way, you can't justify the violence whether it's some form of accusation. When I'm attacked here, the way guys justify their brutal and overboard attacks on me is to lie about things about me, say I'm a horrible person, and then it's to justify some brutal attack on me. But in reality, brutal attack all comes at me because I have an opinion about a game made for kids that they don't agree with. When you examine what it really is, that's the reality they face. Mad at me about an opinion I have about a game initially made for 12-year-old kids. When you put it to them properly, they should feel absolutely childish and stupid that they are angry at me because I have a different opinion than they do about a game made for 12-year-old kids. I don't know how to more drill that point any more clearly home, right? It's like these are games made for kids. When we talk about them, to go overboard on a game made for 12-year-olds, it doesn't seem, I don't get the war here. It can be a them problem, and the problem is they're all fighting over something that's not even here. They're fighting over reputation when none of it would get them growth here. There's not enough growth here to fight over an audience. Like, you're really not going to make much. Like, there's not much to fight over. The fight is it's so petty because it's like pretending you have an audience that's big enough to give the supportive stuff to that you want to fight over, but you really don't. So what are you fighting over? You're fighting over scraps that aren't going to get you much. It's all the burning of the bridges, making people hate each other, all for fucking just about absolutely nothing. Right? Even if you won the race and I said, here, have all the fucking people in the audience from this person, you'll still find at the end of the day, you'll be disappointed. You realize it didn't take you too far, meaning there was nothing really to fight over. What the fuck are we fighting about? Why are you slitting each other's throats over content when there's really nothing to fight over? You're not going to bring in 10,000 new people suddenly. So it's why you, but here's the crazy thing. All the backstabbing you see around the old school, it's all based on this delusional idea that they are fighting for that type of extended amount of people coming that aren't even there. Like, it's, Stephen, we're going to take you down to make ourselves look good because we're trying to grow something. Like, dude, there's nothing to fight over. That means most likely positive content that we could do together could bring new people in because the drama content doesn't do that. So the complaining content might make the seals. But you'll notice when you do complaining content that you grow very slow. I do it. I know this purposely, but I know what I'm doing. I'm just saying for the guys that are out there complaining, they might know compared to other YouTubers, it's a bit of a snail pace. But though weirdly, like, they might get one or two people, but they'll get like 20 or 30 or 40 likes pretty consistently. Why is that happening? Why is there consistent likes, but very small growth, but like good likes? Because the seals. That means the content itself is not growing the population in the community much. See, positive content with me, positive content, would most likely bring new people in. So then you start bringing in new people in, and then there's more people to fight over. And you want to grow that. Now, as a community, we want to get together because we have such a small number of people that there's nobody who's going to be really rewarded, even if you win it all. That it'd be better for all of us to sort of come together in this positive way to grow that pot, right? So then there's a bigger portion of people to grow YouTubers in this realm, to compete for those numbers. But the problem is the old school didn't build itself up like that before it started down the let's go down this lane, right? It just didn't get there. So it needs to do shit like that. Like you need the community, it needs to grow to have more audience, because right now, even if I said, okay, even if every old school YouTuber just dropped off for whatever reason, 100% of their audience came up and signed up to me, the audience that watches their stuff, I think everyone would be disappointed at the small number of people that, oh, say when you see 7,000 this guy, old school guys, and 7,000 this guys, it's mostly the same people. So even if this guy, and this guy dropped, I'm not going to get like 14,000. I'm still going to only get like 7,000. So the numbers won't even add up. It'd be something very similar in the audience. The audience for these guys are not that big, so they're fighting over crumbs, but they're fighting again as if they're fighting for a whole pie. And they're not even, there's not even a full piece, but they're fighting for a whole pie that's not even there. And they're fighting in a way that you'd only fight, like you'd only do that if you're going for the whole pie. Like, dude, you guys are crucifying me as if you're trying to grow, as if there's a whole pie to go get by crucifying me. But actually, you're just burning a bridge. You won't get much. There's not much to get. We would have grown the fucking community if you wouldn't have burnt me and brought me on the stream in a positive way. And that's where you would have got your fucking growth. That's what people want, is the positive gaming talk, but entertaining. It has to be non-boring positive. That's the trick. And you can make positive entertaining with the right people, the right clicks, the right energy, right? But you got to make that. And but then once you make good entertaining, that's where the majority are on YouTube. It's Matt Colville is entertaining positive. That's why he has a big crowd. So I just told you the secret. Dungeon Craft, or whatever his name is. Entertaining positive content. That's the secret. It's so in your face. The audience here in the tabletop role-playing game hobby have been screaming at us content creators for years exactly what they want, and they show us by their support. So all you got to do is look over and go, there's the guy that bitches. He has 7,000. There's the guy who does positive, entertaining content. He has 500,000. So the massive difference between 7,000 and 500,000 should be obvious. That every other big guy like Matt Colville, good, positive, like entertaining, positive stuff, like good stuff. See, it's you can do good. They'll say, when you talk about your favorite game or something like that, a lot of positive content you hear from old school guys is boring stuff. But again, the trick is, how do you make positive, good, entertaining? That the majority has screamed at us for years. That's who the biggest content creators are. The audience is just like screaming every time we go, what do you want? They're like, positive, entertaining. What do you want? Positive, entertaining. See us over here doing this, 500,000 compared to your 7,000. I think we've told you enough times what we want. We made it very clear to you what we want. Positive, entertaining. I'm an energetic guy. So if you bring me on, positive, entertaining, out there, crazy, talkative, would have been good on streams with people. Just such a fucking waste, because a bunch of old men want to play like they're in high school and have to get petty shit. And then they run into a real man like me, that if you disrespect me, fuck you. And if you haven't met a real man, nice to meet you. That's what happens when you talk shit to them. You think I'm some 19-year-old kid on fucking YouTube? 40-some-year-old fucking grown man. You disrespect me, you go fuck yourself. I'm not here to talk to kids or babysit on fucking streams. There, had to get that out. Always good to say that shit. But I'm not. I'm just not here to fucking have this childish interaction. And I'm old school. Why can't I expect other older guys like myself to be mature? It's like I'm not going into the 5e world. I'm coming in where there's 40, 50-year-old guys. I'm like, why can't I expect men to be men? We're all of the age. Why do I have to worry about this immature insult humor thing? real man in real life would never put up with. So to me, that's where I look at it and go, it's ridiculous. Things have to change with that group of people. I just don't think you're going to attract many people if you keep behaving that way, right? I think there's a lot of old school guys that would be here doing interviews to us if the reputation of the old school was more positive. If the reputation of the old school was a more, sorry if there's a glitch here, but if the reputation was more positive, we'd see more people, because Dungeon Craft, after you forget, the Dungeon Craft started off as old school, abandoned it because there was no audience. Ruin Hammer was old school, served the old school, didn't grow that big, did good in the old school, but again, for the old school, less than 10,000. Then he jumps over to 5e and hardcore 5e and skyrockets and gets a much bigger group. And he was complaining. At one point, he was complaining about Watsy. And then he just went to this shitload of fucking good, positive, but entertaining content. That's the secret. It's the positive part that's the big secret. Now, everybody wants to entertain. So that we should all be trying to entertain in some way. But it's the positive that the majority want. Like for all the old guys that are just complaining out there, the majority are screaming at us for positive. ChatGPT should be proving that to you. Things like that, when people tell you in the world they prefer to talk to ChatGPT. Want to know why? Because ChatGPT tells them shit they want to hear, like the nice, positive shit. That's why it's so attractive to people. They can interact with this thing and feel good. That's right. Yeah, I do know, but I don't know. Because that's, in a way, that they're screaming at you. We want to feel that way to a degree when we interact with your content. It's like, cool, the thing. Yeah. We don't want to hear the bitching all the time. Now, I'm as guilty of bitching about stuff as anybody else, but I at least I know what I'm doing. I see guys out there trying to grow and they're doing the bitching content. And I'm like, I keep telling them there's a very small fucking ceiling for that shit. Even the tabletop role-playing game, even the old school, our own people, the majority of them watch Matt Colville. Yet we have a whole list of YouTubers dedicated only to the old school, dedicated truly to that kind. Yet the majority of our people watch Matt Colville. How fucking embarrassing is that when we need a new school guy to come in and take care of our fucking people, because we don't got a fucking content creator out there taking care of them in that way. Instead, we got a group of content creators taking care of a minority within the old school. So the negative minority feeds them, but it doesn't feed them much. There's just not much. That's why it's like, hey guys, when you get rid of that crowd and they're less than 10, they're not giving you the big growth. When you get to the positive crowd, holy, find out the old school was always as big as I've been hinting to you. There's millions of old school people globally active and they're purchasing and everything. I look at the YouTubers, I'm like, well, if we have millions of guys that are old school in the audience, why do the majority of you not have 10,000 and you've been doing YouTube content at a pretty high pace for almost, in some cases, 6 years, 8 years, maybe 10 years? I'm like, why would that crowd and you don't got like somebody like me taking you down or sabotaging you, why do we have more people if there is this many active people online that we know of? It's because the content they want is not being done. That's it. So I try to come at this positive gaming content where I just do talk about the gaming. Now tonight, I'm just telling you some of my, not so much venting, I'm just telling you things I think are so important for the old school to take forward and just get off the pot, right? And just go, guys, here's what works. You don't need to experiment. You already know. You just need whatever positive thing you're going to talk about does have to be entertaining. You can't just be like, hey man, I'll tell you about my campaign. It can't be the nerd talk. If it's telling them about the campaign, the details that you would care about have to be almost be less important. Like the sort of generic or sort of generalizations about what happened in your campaign, how that could be comparable to with other people, like communicate that as it relates to other people. That's the way you want to talk about that thing. You wouldn't want to give a boring speech about, man, you ran these things and then you said the cool thing. Nobody gives a fuck. That's the thing people are telling you this morning. right? With them, because for the audience, it's only about you if about you is about them. And if you get that, you get that. Meaning either they relate with something to you or something you're covering. But there has to be something your audience is going to relate to. And if it's just a personal campaign story, you might not have that many people relate with it. And then do you just tell the story? How energetic is that? Are you standing up? Are you telling it like this? Are you smiling? Are you doing the thing? Are you putting any charisma into what you're saying? Are you doing what a YouTuber should do and entertain people? I think all these things are so important. But then we get a bunch of guys that get on here that are retired. I get it. Unlike people like me, they don't have to work. I have to work. Right? So they have an easy life. So when I hear some of the guys say they're on here just fucking around, I'm like, yeah, I guess I can buy that. I can buy that you're on here just fucking around. So probably I had a few people here for a little while, but I probably know there's another stream going on. If there is anyone left over, here's this at the end. Something in the OSR is definitely happening. Go search it out. Probably the bros or something, maybe. I heard some rumor. So that stream is probably happening. So some of the people that normally would check me out or say hi to me are probably going to be definitely watching that stuff. So I'll let them go watch it. I think I did the second Ed justice. If there were glitches, I stayed an extra 45 minutes talking to you guys. You know, whatever. I love you. Let's hope that, because it's not going to be the same storm tomorrow, we have a good connection all the way through start to finish. I hope. Of course, Black Rose, I know you enjoy and relaxing. Tomorrow night is going to be the cards. That's going to be good. If you don't know about the deck of many things, I'm going to go over details you probably haven't heard before. Tell you all about the cards and get into it and have fun. And we'll see how far that goes. Ooh, cool. All right, guys. Love you.